and welcome to the Feeder Series podcast, your guide to everything from the junior single-seater world. I'm your host, Jim Kimberley, and I've already told you a lie because this podcast is not about everything from the junior single-seater world. It's only here to talk about the upcoming Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine, which I'm not used to saying because everyone else says FRECA, but that's all we're going to talk about in this episode. And I've got three guests joining me who are some of the best you could hope for to get your FRECA fixed. Now, before I introduce them, if you enjoy watching or listening to the podcast, please drop us a like, follow us on your podcast player of choice, subscribe on YouTube, and leave a comment with your thoughts. And we've got over 250,000 listens and views, so thank you, everybody, for all of that support. It really means a lot. Now, back to today, the crack team of the three experts that I've gathered here to guide us through FRECA. We have Percy Wolf, the Feeder Series FRECA editor. We have Chris McCarthy, commentator extraordinaire for F3, FRECA, F1 Kids, more. And we've got William Alatalo, a FRECA podium finisher before FRECA was even FRECA, FREC, and one of F3's 2022's best talents. Now, I'm going to go and speak to all of you, but William Alatalo, you've been on the podcast before, and this is your first time since your 2022 campaign, which you then went off the Feeder Series radar because you went into coaching roles, and it was one of those horrible stories that everybody hates about budget being problematic. But what are you up to these days? Because by now you should be in Formula One, clearly, and replacing Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, now I'm. That was even too nicely said. But yeah, now I'm just on my GT world journey. Last year, I kind of tested different cars. So went off the Formula route to test LMP2 and GT3. And then this year, then kind of stuck to GT3. But yeah, it's the went to GT because of budget reasons, basically. So like always. And even though like LMP2 is more of a car for me, it felt faster, felt nicer to drive, but still enjoying GTs now. Tested actually last Monday, 22nd in Misano, and next race is in a little bit more than a week on 3rd, 4th, and 5th in Misano. So looking forward to the races. So life is going fine, basically. It's all good. Back to racing.
Don't feel too sorry for Mr. Alatalo. He's still racing very, very fast cars. It just so happened to have roofs as a version, which is good to see because you were a big talent. And well, I'm going to go through FRECA, obviously, but Percy, you haven't been on the podcast for a little while as well. What's going on in your world? And no, where we're recording, which is a couple of weeks before FRECA actually begins, you've just come from Paul Ricard to see the cars in action. How's life been for Mr. Wolf?
It's very good. As you said, I went to Paul Ricard last week, so of course I'm really happy to have been to the FRECA paddock for the first time since Zandvoort at the end of last year, and yeah, everything's going really fine. We see the excitement building up, and we're getting closer and closer to the start of the season. And you know that I'm a proud French patriot, and of course, with this season with 8 French drivers, it's even more exciting for me. But even if we remove this patriotic fiber, it will be an incredible season with tons of talents from part of F1 academies, part of big management programs that are all set to big careers. Maybe not all will go to F1, of course, but there are some who will probably go to F1 one day. And yeah, it's so exciting to see their careers building up. And can't see what we will get at Hockenheim.
Oh, it's going to be really exciting. And I think we're not going to get every single driver going into F1. We're all Feeder Series experts here, but we probably get a lot of them that go to F3. And Chris McCarthy, you've seen that transition pretty much firsthand with calling the names in FRECA and FREC and now F3 as well. And how are things going from your end with, you've had a busy time as well, and you've got a busy time coming up.
Yes, well, first of all, pleasure to be back and see everyone on the podcast. It's been a really good start to the season over in Formula 3. It's great to see so many of the FRECA drivers coming up and settling in so well, so fast, and also seeing some of the head-to-heads. You know, we had 2 drivers who were once fighting for that FRECA title, now teammates together and could have a head-to-head for the Formula 3 title as well. And I'm sure that's going to be the case. These drivers that we're seeing in FRECA eventually are going to go on to fight for the title in Formula 3 and Formula 2, of course. We've got an ex-FRECA driver leading the Formula 2 championship quite comfortably as well in Zane Maloney. So, this is very much the feeding ground to go into. It's now officially on that road to F1 list. So, this is basically a place for them to prove their ground to then go on to race in Formula 3 and Formula 2.
Yeah, so you're really looking at this grid at the moment with some names we're familiar with, some names we're very unfamiliar with, but this is essentially what F2 2027, F3 2025, maybe 2026 as well. There are drivers we are seeing already, well, some going into the second year and some who are going to be making that step up. Now, Mr. Alatalo, before we go and dive deep into some of the names and some of the things we're expecting, you've driven in multiple cars. You're a very well journeyed driver for your young age. But the step between going from Formula Regional level car to the Formula 3 level car, because it's not Formula 4, and people who are unfamiliar with the feeder series world, the regional's this weird middle ground that's somewhere not Formula 5, it's not Formula 3, it's kind of Formula 3.5, but it's not. What sort of differences can you tell us about the cars?
Well, I mean, I think there is a big jump. I wouldn't say massive, just because I think regional is physically quite hard car to drive. It's not the jump between F4 and regional. I think as a physicality, it's even it's bigger jump. I think for arms and stuff like that, is the jump to F3 is not too bad. Obviously, the speeds and G forces then make F3 harder. The amount of grip, the amount of aero you have, it's your eyes have to get kind of used to that you are taking all the information at a correct speed when you jump to F3. The tires, I think that's one of the biggest things. F3, as whoever followed last year, in the races they go 8 seconds slower than in the qualifying sometimes, and in qualifying you normally have one push lap with low fuel and good tire grip. So I think the 80-70% of the learning is what happens with the tire, how to take everything out of it, how to warm up the tire. The warm-up procedure is very critical in my opinion. You don't just drive around the track for 2 laps and then do a push lap. You have to warm the brakes up and warm laterally so that you don't scrap the tire, but you heat up in a linear way the tire temperature from the inside to on the top and stuff like this. And it really is a critical tire, the F3 tire. I think it's even more what I heard from people last year, but even when I drove in 2022, it was really hard tire to manage. Same for the race distance. You have to be saving the rear tires all the time. In regional also, but a lot less than in F3. F3, basically 95% of the race, you only save the rear tires. And then,
So what we're hearing right now, guys, is if you want to watch flat out racing where you're not doing tyre management, Formula Regional is the way to go from Mr. Alatalo. You've heard it here first. Percy, the season that's coming up, I love Formula 3. Everyone knows I love Formula 3. And the Formula 3 calendar is one of the best ones, I think, generally in the feeder series as well. But FRECA is pretty competitive against that. I have to maybe reconsider. So I'm looking at what we've got starting the season. It's Hockenheim. And I mean, we missed that in Formula 3, Formula 2, Formula 1. Then you got Spa, Zandvoort, Hungaroring, Mugello, Paul Ricard, Imola, Red Bull Ring, Barcelona, and Monza. Now, as calendar goes, you must be pretty excited for some of those races, Percy.
It's pure pleasure. It's 10 classical tracks that have all welcomed F1 at one moment or another. My only regret about this calendar is that there is no more Monaco, or even in a round that is supporting Formula 1, Formula 2, maybe even Formula 3. So it's 10 superb tracks, 10 superb circuits that will be supporting International GT Open, that will be supporting a lot of GT cars. My regrets would be about that, because we know that when FRECA, when F4 is supporting a F1 Grand Prix, the team directors are watching it. They are watching it. The drivers are watching it, etc. And it helps. It can help the career of several drivers. there will be 10 tracks, but it will be more. They will be a bit far from the F1 world. Of course, the best of them will go to F3 anyway if they have the talent and the budget, of course. But this calendar is just superb. There are some tracks that we miss in F1, F2, F3. I'm thinking of Hockenheim. I mean, this track, I love this track. It gave us a superb round last year for the season final. It was just amazing. There was the team's title battle between Prema and our race that went on to the final lap of the final race with some excellent commentary from Chris. No, it was really a special moment, and this track has so much history. So of course, every people will say, "Oh, I'm waiting for Spa-Francorchamps. I'm waiting for maybe Monza." But really, Hockenheim has a special place in my heart. Maybe because we don't see it enough in single seaters, at least.
It's a really good championship to look at. The calendar is very exciting, and like you say, it's a lot of International GT Open support, but there's not that F1 support. And Chris, as Percy was alluding to, we have had drivers almost get their chance with a junior team because of how they've done in FRECA, because they are on that calendar, and that can open up doors. Is that something that's maybe a little bit concerning for the championship, or is this something, do you think, as Percy suggested, that the cream will rise anyway?
I mean, the fact that there's not a round on an F1 race, I don't think it's too concerning. I think it was great, as Percy said, to have Monaco in particular was great, but obviously Formula 3 is now there, so it's quite a busy weekend for them. I think it'd be cool to at least have one round with them, but I mean, I think it's 7 rounds. I think it's around 7 anyway. Don't collide with F1 weekends or something like that, or the support weekends anyway. And those weekends, the teams are going to be watching, and then we'll be straight into postseason testing, and the drivers will be there filling those seats in big numbers, and immediately will be looking to get their seats confirmed in Formula 3. Those who have the budget to do so for the following year. So I don't think it's a huge concern. I think the drivers and the teams, and the supporting networks are definitely watching FRECA. They're keeping a close eye on it. They've seen, look, this is where Kimi Antonelli came from, and that's going to put a lot more eyes on it. We've got the F1 Academy champion coming into FRECA for a reason, and we've got Iron Dames coming into the championship for a reason as well. So they could have chosen other championships to put their champion. They chose FRECA for a reason, and because of that alone, there's going to be a lot of eyes on the championship from the F1 paddocks to see how they get on, how she gets on, and how everyone else gets on as well. So that was a big move by the championship, and one that's going to bring a lot of attention to it. Not that it needed any more anyway.
I was wondering how soon we'd go, and I thought I'd be the one to bring the name Kimi Antonelli up. But of course, he is the champion, and I mean, from some of the rumours that will be coming out this weekend, he could be in Formula One as soon as Imola with some of the news. But we shall see. Percy, briefly, just on last year's championship, we're going to focus on this year, but last year's championship turned into a rookie fight, and we've got now drivers in Formula 2 and Formula 3 who were in FRECA last year. And how do you reflect on the 2023 FRECA championship?
Of course, Antonelli has globally dominated the year because he had this strength that he didn't have any race where he didn't have the pace or he didn't get any points. Even in his worst weekends, he was still sixth at the worst. In the worst case scenario, he was sixth. And otherwise, it was always consistent podiums. And I think it was that particularly that made the difference between Martinus Stenson and Tim Tramnitz, who were his biggest rivals, because both of them were very, very fast. They beat Antonelli at several occasions, but there were some 1-2 rounds that they missed. It happens, but it didn't happen to Antonelli. So that's what made the difference. And of course, now we see Antonelli performing in F2, so there's not yet one podium, but he was discovering the tracks of Saki, of Jeddah, of Melbourne. Now he will be back to Europe, and I'm very excited to see how he will manage, because of course we all know the enormous expectations around him with F1 rumors at nearly every moment of his career now. So yeah, it's getting very exciting. And of course, there's also Stenson and Tramnitz that are continuing to perform in F3. Stenson already got one win in a sprint race. Tramnitz got a podium in a future race. So we all see these two drivers performing now. Tramnitz with the support of the Red Bull Junior team. His performance in FRECA earned him a spot in the Red Bull Junior team. So it shows, if we had any doubt, that the team bosses are all watching FRECA. We are all watching FRECA. Anyway, we just have to see the field this year in FRECA. We see some juniors from Mercedes with Dorian Percy, some juniors from Ferrari with Tuka Taponen, Rafael Camara, from Red Bull with Enzo Dellini, from McLaren with Ogo Ugochukwu. So there are so many people that will be watching who will be the next FRECA champion, who will be the one who will follow the footsteps of Andrea Kimi Antonelli.
I can't wait. Excuse me. I can't wait to see who does make the step up, because I don't know at this point. It's far too early. I mean, the season hasn't started for one, which is always a point. But you had a sense of the Antonelli effect last year. Was he going to do it? Was it going to be some of these second-year drivers? I want to talk about the teams, and I want to talk to Chris and Percy about it, but about the teams that are changing a little bit. But Mr. Alatalo, you know firsthand, because you've been in the teams, and we're talking about what's called a spec championship. These are the same cars, and people unfamiliar with the feeder series world are thinking, right, this is what I want. This is Formula One, except for I've got Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso and Alex Albon and Nico Hulkenberg in the same car. It's exactly the same car, but they're not. They have teams which differ. You have teams which are always at the top or frequently at the top, and teams which are frequently at the bottom. What is it inside of these teams that has these cars, which are, for all intents and purposes, the same car, changing that order? Like, why is that, or not changing that order, I should say? Why is that order always so, not static, but what changes within the teams?
Yeah. So the engineers and mechanics, team manager, in the end, that's what makes the team. The chassis is the same. They have tattoos. I don't know the number, but tattoos, chassis. Everybody has the same engine, or should have in the same range, and that's always a little bit controversial. I think in regional it's less than in F4, but even in regional, you make, the manufacturer makes 20, 30, 50, 40 engines. There's always a difference between one another, and it's always, if that team gets better engines or not, and then because they also have a range, kind of, that the technicians who check the engines, and but the range is still a little bit wide, so maybe one engine is better or not, but that's beside the point. But there is still even difference in engine, but not that much in FRECA. But yeah, the engineers, I think they make the biggest difference. How you set up the car, you have lots of play in the not aerodynamics, and also just in the springs and the ride heights, tire angles, stuff like this. And then tire pressure is quite simple to do, but also you need to be really precise on that. And the more data, the more acknowledged the team has, the better the car will be. And some teams have lots of experience or do more testing, because in FRECA you can do more during the winter. You can do testing how much team wants. I guess it's still the rule like that before the season starts. So in the end, the more the team puts money on it, the more they can kind of produce speed of the car, the more they can analyze and take little details from here and there, and then the car will be better. I think that in FRECA is not too much difference in the cars. I think it's the best championship in terms of driver just showing the speed. So I think it's a good championship in that. I think the best car and the worst car, I think the difference is not that much. I think the good drivers can make, even in not that good of a team or not that good of a car, they can make a really good result.
I love to hear these sorts of things, because it is that misconception that a spec series is all the same, and it is those little bits as you start getting familiar with feeder series that you are paying for experience, really. Even like, as you say, there is in Formula 2, we're not going to go too much into it because we'll probably get in trouble, but there is these thoughts about how much of an engine fine margins can make a difference with certain drivers. But it does come down from what it sounds like, William, that the teams at the top, they've got the engineers that know how to set up a car, and you're dealing with, I guess, and maybe you can confirm, William, that you've got a driver who's coming in, they're maybe 16 years old, they don't really know about a lot of car setup. Then you've got an engineer here with 5-10 years of experience versus an engineer who's maybe just graduated from school, from university, who is doing this for the first time as well. So it's a rookie with a rookie. Is it that sort of thing that a setup or the wrong setup can really
sure.
affect
I
if
think
you win or lose a race?
mostly the engineers who have more experience, especially in that car with that tires. I think that's also crucial. And yeah, that's a huge difference between an engineer who just graduated from school. And then it depends a little bit on the driver. If the driver is a really good driver, can win the championship, then the engineer needs to be more in the technical side of it. But then, if it's rookie in the championship, just went from F4 to regional, even if it's a good driver, he still needs to learn how to drive with the car. The braking shape is important, how you push the throttle, the lines, is more weight, more aero with the car, how you should drive with that kind of car. And the engineer needs to be able to understand it himself. And, especially if the engineer has already some experience in racing, I think many engineers don't, many engineers also have, but it also helps the driver if the engineer has himself driven a Formula car in the past, or in some kind of racing where he can then guide the driver to be a better driver. So yeah, definitely I think the engineer can make a difference in the technical side, but also teaching the driver to be a better driver.
I love this sort of thing. This is why we have an expert. I said it was an expert team, and we've got the expert here to give us that technical analysis. And how better to get the insights than somebody who's gone through it themselves. So I'm going to say on behalf of the audience, thank you for that insight, William. Now, on the drivers and the teams, you mentioned the teams. Some teams are changing this year, Percy. On the day we're recording, which is not the day this is getting released, you had some confirmation that we are facing not the same lineup as 2023. We already knew that Arden weren't going to be returning, and we've already got Iron Dames coming in, but you've heard more news as well. Can you let us know?
Yeah, sadly, I received today the confirmation that Monolight Racing would be leaving, at least would not be racing this year in FRECA. They hadn't done any of the preseason testing in Barcelona, in Paul Ricard, and in Hockenheim. So it's a pity because I know they were talking with a couple of very talented drivers like James Headley and Kevin Foster, who would have definitely deserved a spot in FRECA. So that's a bit of a pity. We know this team finished last, of course, in the standings, but they showed some potential. They showed that with the right drivers, sometimes in the right occasions, they could fight for points. I remember about the appearance of Nikita Bedrin. I think it was in Zandvoort with Monolight, where he finished in the top 10 twice, I think. So yeah, it's a pity. Of course, as you said, they will be replaced numerically by Iron Dams. So Iron Dams that will be bringing an all-female lineup with F1 Academy champion Marta Garcia and Mercedes Junior driver Dorian Pain. So it's interesting, of course, but it's not completely a new team because, in fact, the two Iron Dams car will be two rebranded Prema cars. In fact, it will be a bit like back in the days 2-3 years ago when MP Motorsport had two teams with MP Motorsport, of course, and FA Racing. They will have a kind of A team and B team. So that will be once again the case with this time Prema having Prema Racing and Iron Dams. So it means that Dorian Pain, that Marta Garcia will have the opportunity to fight for top position. They will be in the good conditions. They will have, as William said, the best engineers, at least the best conditions to perform. So it will be interesting to see their progression throughout the year. I don't see them fighting for the top, at least at the beginning of the season, especially for Dorian Pain, who missed a lot of preseason testing and who is also engaged in multiple other series, including F1 Academy and WEC, World Endurance Championship. So yeah, 2 teams less, 1 team more, that will still make 33 cars, so that's still a lot. So we won't get it will still be very, very exciting. There will still be battles from the top to the back of the field, and yeah, very competitive field once again with 11 teams and 33 drivers.
We're seeing in Formula One, Chris, a lot of talk about we need more teams, and obviously Andretti have not joined. We've got Prema recently going IndyCar and not joining F1. And you see in F3, there's a lot of teams and there's a lot of drivers and there's a lot of entertainment. Now, FRECA, especially recently and even this year, it's got more teams in F3. How much of a deep field do you have in FRECA, and how much of a deep field are you expecting to have in 2024 with so many teams and drivers competing? Are we expecting battles front to back?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a very competitive grid. At the front, we've seen already the Formula Regional Middle East Championship. That was a very competitive series. Some drivers used it to get ready for Formula 3. Quite a lot used it to get ready for this championship, including the champion, Tuka Tappinen, who's going to race for RHGP. I think we're effectively going to see that battle resumed, albeit with 20 drivers added in. It's going to be a fantastic. And then we have a Formula Regional Oceania champion, Roman Belinsky, returning for his 3rd season. And he was going head to head with some familiar names from the championship in that as well. And some Formula 3 drivers, I think, even appeared in that as well. So we're seeing those 2 championships almost combining together. And then all the drivers that maybe didn't do some racing over the winter that are just going to be returning back and just use the testing to get ready for this. So, yeah, up and down the field, we've got drivers returning, but new names are no longer, what I would say, rookies as such. No longer are rookies, essentially. They've already done 5 rounds over in the Middle East, or 5 rounds down in Australia, New Zealand rather. And for that, they're not coming in as rookies anymore. So we should expect them to go and fight for the title straight away, like the likes of Kimi Antonelli came in as the Middle East champion last year and then won the title. So Tuka Tappinen will be hoping to replicate that, but he'll have a stiff competition from those returning to the championship, like Rafa Kamara, who was also in that championship as well. But the rookie championship is going to be very competitive as well. Of course, Martinius Stenchel won that last year, and he's already a winner now in Formula 3. So, I enjoy following both fights, even though they both finished on the podium last year.
I'm going to just sit back a little bit and just behind the scenes and, peeling behind the curtain a little bit. Percy and Chris in a little green room bit before recording, they just went off on one talking about who do we think is going to win the championship. And, well, spoilers a little bit that Rafael Kamara, Percy, was the name that's getting touted, but it started a little bit of a debate. So who do you think is going to win the championship, Percy? And Chris, please interject.
It's hard. It's very hard because, of course, I think those 2 have to be the main favorites. Rafael Kamara, of course, is, in my opinion, he was at least the biggest favorite because highest returning driver, finished 5th last year with a couple of wins. He beat Andrea Kimi Antonelli on some rare occasions, but still, he has an impressive record in F4 in karting. Consistently runner-up behind Antonelli, in fact. So, of course, he has to be the favorite. Now, his start of the season has been a little underwhelming, maybe compared to the expectation we had, because he has a lot of pressure around him. Ferrari wanted him to do a 2nd year to get the title, to finally get a 1st title in single-seaters. And of course, he has a lot of pressure because inside this Ferrari driver academy, there's also another driver, Tuka Tappinen, that is adapting very well to Formula Regional cars, as he directly won the Middle East Championship this winter in front of Rafael Kamara. So these have to be the 2 favorites. Now, even in preseason testing, I found Tappinen a bit more impressive than Kamara, but it's hard to say. At least we could say that the 2 had the pace to be in front. Tuka Tappinen will be in our race. Rafael Kamara will be back to Prema. So these are the 2 historical top teams that fought for the team for the title till the end. Of course, Air Race was with Tramnit and Stenson. Prema was with Antonelli and Camara. And I think these two teams have two strong trios because there are not only Taponen and Camara, there is also at Air Race Zachary David, who finished 4th in Middle East, plus Enzo Dellini coming from F4 that will be the youngest driver, so he will have to learn at the beginning. But I think at the end of the season, he could be very strong, and he has the support of the Red Bull Junior team. And of course, in Prema, we also have Ugo Chukwu, who has the support of McLaren, Italian F4 runner-up in front of Arvid Lindblad, that is now superbly performing in FIA F3. And we also have James Wharton, who was dropped by the Ferrari Driver Academy and who will want to have revenge and maybe to beat his former teammates, Taponen and Camara, to maybe regain a spot at the Ferrari Driver Academy. So yeah, the two trios of Prema and our race will be very, very, very strong.
Chris, are you going to argue against that?
No, not really. I mean, I think obviously it was decided on the last lap last year, wasn't it? We've essentially got, I was just trying to count it there. I think we've got 6 champions coming in to the championship this year. We've got our Spanish F4 champion, our French F4 champion, our F1 Academy champion. Our Spanish F4 champion is TFL now, our French F4 champion, Evan Gilter, our F1 Academy champion, Marta Garcia, Euro 4 champion, Ugo Chukwu, then our 2 reigning regional champions in Roman Belinsky from the Oceania and Tuka Tapanen. So we've got, I might be, Percy can correct me, I might even be missing one there.
Well, you've also got Dorian Pan, who's going to be the 2024 F1 Academy champion in Camera Race as well.
So we'll add that in at the end. No, so we got 6.
Last year, James Wharton won F4 UAE. Last year.
Yeah, so he won. So yeah, but we've ran that this year, haven't we? So we've got 6 reigning.
He was champion in 2023.
We've got 6 reigning champions coming into this.
1 past champion, 1 future champion.
Which is fantastic, right? And a lot of those sit within those 2 teams as well. Many of those sit within those 2 teams. So I think that head-to-head is going to be fascinating. I'm intrigued by the rebuilding process at ART. Not just, they've gone through a rough patch. In F3, it's been really intriguing to watch, but one of those champions sits down at ART in Evan Gilter. And I'm very excited to see how he gets on. Very exciting young driver, came into the championship last year for a little bit, did fantastic. He's partnered by Alessandro Giusti, who fired that car way up the order. It was absolutely superb what he did.
Williams backing now as well.
Yeah, so Alessandro Giusti and Evan Gilter make a very good partnership down at ART, and Evan is a rookie as well. So that's going to make an interesting partnership. I'll try and cover off some other drivers. I mean, Nikita Bedrin coming in as an F3 driver would be very exciting. Percy talked about how he did, at his Hockenheim round last year. He's already been quick in testing. I think everyone's excited by Iron Dames, but Brando Badua as well. Van Amersfoort, Kaz is gone off the Porsche Super Cup now, but they've got some very strong drivers there at Van Amersfoort in Brando, and Pedro Claro as well, the Brazilian, who's looked very quick in testing. So, yeah, I mean, all round, it's hard to put one. James Wharton, he mentioned as well, an F4 UAE champion. If I had to pick one, it's hard to... Tuka Tapanen was quickest at Paul Ricard as we record this. He's going to be flying with confidence. It's hard to look against that, I guess, but I guess that just gives you some context as to how hard it is to pick one, because overall we've got some very, very exciting drivers up and down the field. So I guess that answers your earlier question.
Oh, it does indeed. William, I've been told before, if you want to win, you have to back a Finn. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, I mean, you guys have been talking who will be winning the championship. For me, the question is who's second in the end. I think Taponen will win by 100 points at least. So no. I mean, it's gonna be a tough championship even for the Finn. But what I know him very well, and he's an incredible driver, as we saw in the what is it called? Middle East Championship, something, yeah. And I mean, he drove there incredibly well. It was by far the fastest driver. Okay, the tires there are GT tires, and now it's Pirelli. So it changes a lot the behavior of the car, how the driver should drive the car. But I mean, in the end, it's still brake, throttle, turning the steering wheel. So I think a good driver with either in the championship in there should be good also back in Europe. And yeah, obviously I'm high hopes for Taponen. Then there is the other Ferrari Academy driver, Camara. I think he kind of, like Percy said, needs to win the championship in the end. I mean, he should win. He has experience. From last year, he was really, really good. And then this year is, if Taponen comes and beats him in the end, that's kind of a bad thing for Camara. Then I think he needs to be better than Taponen. But obviously, I'm looking forward for the Finn fighting for the championship, obviously. And like I said, I know him personally. He works extremely hard. He's probably going to be the champion. I will say that.
I love going back. I'm just looking at the 2021 Formula Regional European Championship with William Alatalo in there, and you just look at like almost a who's in feeder series, and then you have these drivers who have gone off to do different things. Gregoire Saucy, for example, the champion of that year. Hadrian David, we got Alex Quinn. Then we got
the States now.
Exactly, and it is a breeding ground, isn't it, for terrific drivers? And even the ones who was in Formula 2 and Formula 3, Paul Aron, Zane Maloney, look where they're doing at the moment.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Saucy's 24-hour Le Mans this year, isn't he, as well? So it's that guy. Yeah, it's fantastic. As you said, it's every year that grid is that grid is done absolutely fantastic, and they all will. So it's great to see.
It really is. And then also Franco Colapinto and Gabriele Mini, Isaac Hadj. It just
wow.
Yeah, it was a stacked grid that you were amongst, William. So I'm not surprised that everyone's doing so well. Is there any closing thoughts that we've got about this championship before we wrap anything up? I know, Chris, Percy, you're going to be covering it extensively. Is there anything that we've missed?
Oof, I don't know, really. I guess you mentioned the calendar. It's another great calendar. It's full of, as we mentioned, full of champions coming into this. I think we've covered off I think all we're missing is probably our Italian F4 champion. Other than that, who shot straight up to F3. Other than that, they're all coming to FRECA. So it could be a battle of the champions and the returning drivers. And it's a great calendar. We're travelling all around to some of the best circuits, as Percy mentioned. I'm sure William's raced on most of them. I'm sure he'd agree with that as well. And yeah, we've got a new team as well, which is one of the big stories. Iron Dames, who race in the 24-hour of Le Mans, podium finishers in that. It's going to be very exciting to see how they get on with the F1 Academy champion and the F1 Academy, one of the leading drivers in that championship at the wheel. So yeah. Why not tune in? See how they get on, but see how this battle is going to go. I'm sure they can.
I also just want to say quickly, if I can, Jim, from the calendar, I think it's from F4, it's kind of a now very clear path to F1. I think regional is there. I think there's only a few drivers that go from F4 straight to F3, but I think regional is one of the best series to really go to after F4, or by far the best actually. The tracks are quite same or similar to F3 calendar. Many are the same, and the other tracks like Mugello, Hockenheim, I think they're amazing. I would say I even like probably more the regional calendar than the F3 calendar. I think the tracks just are the best in the world, best in Europe by far. It's just an amazing calendar. Yeah, maybe it's missing being together with F1. When I drove, it was also with the Spa 24-hour race, which I liked personally quite a lot. But now, it's with GT Open, but still, all the F1 Academy personnel will be watching regional. It's clear that all the drivers of the future are going to be in that series. So before going to F3, I think it's a really great championship just to jump on and get a grip on those tracks. Otherwise, going to F3 straight, it's can work, but then the tracks and the practice time on those new tracks will be really, really not that much. I mean, you drive few push laps in the practice and then you go straight to quali. If the track is already something that you are used to, then that's a lot easier to go there and drive well. Like, for example, I didn't drive 2022 in Silverstone, and was quite hard to just go there and do a few push laps in practice and then to qualify. If I would have driven there, would have helped a lot. And now all these FRECA drivers will get the experience on those new tracks. So yeah, I think it's an amazing calendar for them. And yeah, Iron Dames coming in and the F1 Academy drivers, I think it's also good that they go in that championship. In the end, that's the next step for F1 Academy drivers. I think going from there to F3 is a little bit unrealistic. Like they F1 Academy posted on Twitter a few months ago, but I think the step from F1 Academy is to regional and then forward from there. So we'll see how the girls will do this year.
I was going to quickly wrap up, but I think it does lead to a very interesting point. We've kind of skipped over Elena Buhler as well, who's a F1 Academy vice champion and did impress last year, who's racing for ART. That this gender disparity in motorsport is closing very slowly, but I would have to say, looking at the grid and looking at the 3 drivers that we've got in FRECA this year, the 3 female drivers, Elena Buhler, Marta Garcia, Dorian Pan, if we're going to have a level of equality or almost like-for-like comparison, the age difference aside, I would say this is potentially one of the championships to keep an eye on of male versus female racing, Percy, because they are some of the faster female drivers we've got in the sport at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I have to be more excited maybe for Dorian Pan than for Marta Garcia and then Lena Buhler that have already raced,
isn't it?
at the Formula regional level. They have already raced at that level, especially in W Series, while Dorian Pan is the only rookie. So, and it's her first single-seater season. So I think there's more room for improvement. Now, of course, I can be maybe biased. I don't know, but no, I think it would be. I think it will still be an exciting season. I think we shall not wait or expect some incredible performances, some wins, etc. I think it's a long-term project. You don't have to judge the results of F1 Academy just on what Marta and Lena will do this year. It would be totally unfair. The real project is to build it over the years, to see drivers having an opportunity to perform in the best conditions, and that's why the Iron Dames team, the new team, is so important, because we have these female drivers will have the opportunity to perform. Maybe she won't. Maybe both won't perform, but at least they will have the opportunity, and the girls after them, they will have the opportunity too. So it's slowly reducing this gender inequality, but it's the right direction. So please do not judge the results of F1 Academy on just one single season. We will see the results in maybe 5 years, 10 years, probably more. It's just the beginning. It's just the beginning, of course.
And worst case, what a banging livery the Iron Dames have this year. So that's the most exciting thing. But no, I'm genuinely excited, and I want to say thank you to all 3 of you for coming on. That's all the time we've had. Thank you, William Alatalo. Thank you, Percy. Thank you, Chris McCarthy. And thank you to everybody for watching and listening. And if you are watching on YouTube, again, dropping a like on the video, leaving a comment and subscribing to the channel all really helps us out. And if you're listening, leaving a review on the podcast platform you're listening on is greatly appreciated. Finally, check out feederseries.net for more Feeder Series insight, and follow Feeder_Series and FS Americas on X and Feeder Series Net on Instagram. You can find the links to all of those, plus where to find everyone else in this episode, in the YouTube description or the podcast show notes. Until next time, we have been the Feeder Series podcast. Goodbye.